All right. And so again, welcome to our November webinar. Tonight we have some very special guests from a new organization, or not a new organization, but an organization that we know about in America's Walking Club. And I'm going to turn this over to Henry. Henry, I know you didn't want to speak, but you're over there. But why don't you just talk a little bit about what's going on this evening? If you want me to introduce, I can do it. I've got the list of participants. But why don't you tell our membership what's going on this evening?
Sure, thank you, Tim. So this is this workshop is dedicated to looking at our partnership with America Walks, which is another walking organization. If you're not familiar with them, they promote safe places to walk, safe communities to walk. And you'll hear more about that from them. But we've been working with them, talking with them for probably a couple of, maybe 3 years now. They do support our convention. They were at a convention. They supported us with a sponsorship for the convention. They did a workshop. And so we're trying to see how we can grow and evolve this partnership. And so this is going to be more of an open discussion with folks from America Walks that have a mutual interest, which is walking, and our walking clubs across the country. But we've targeted 2 specific regions, that being the Southwest region and the Northwest region. And for none other reason, because that's where we have a core group of folks, and we figure why not start there with those 2 areas and then expand. This is not exclusive to those areas. That's just to get the discussion going, to see how we could do this maybe in the Northeast region or Central or wherever. So I'll leave it at that.
Great, thank you very much. Our panel for this evening actually consists of members from the America's Walks community, as well as members from America's Walking Club. And I'll just ask, as I call your name, to just speak for a few seconds so you pop open and we can see your face. Ian Thomas, State and Local Program Director for America Walks. Ian, you want to wave your hand and say hello to everybody so we see you?
Good evening, everybody. Thanks so much for inviting us.
Very good. Thanks so much for being with us. Izzy, is it Armenta, Transportation Justice and Communications Manager for Oregon Walks.
Hey everyone, good to see you all tonight. Glad to be here. Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you so very much. Our next speaker would be Hayden Black Walker, Director of Planning for Black and Vernon Architecture and Urban Design from Austin, Texas.
Yeah, hi everybody, I'm Hayden. I serve on the board of Walk Austin here in town. We don't really have a statewide organization, but I can talk a little bit about state as well as local. It's nice to be here.
Great. Did you design that bridge behind you in that picture?
I did not. That's the City of Austin Bridge. This was a street in downtown Austin, 2nd Street, that did not exist just a few years ago. And it's become a great place to walk. The car lanes are about the same width as the side areas that are open for people to walk on. So it kind of sends the message that everybody's equal on that bridge.
Oh, very good. Thank you so very much. And for our part of the panel for America's Walking Club, our AVA Board Vice President, Susan Medlin. Susan, you want to say hi?
Hi, guys.
I don't see your face.
It's another Holiday Inn hotel room in Columbia, Missouri.
Oh, very good. Well, thank you so very much, Susan.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Ed Hainline, AVA Deputy Director for the Northwest Region. Ed?
Hello, everyone. Unfortunately, my computer is not allowing me to have my picture showing. So it is what it is. Tim.
Yes.
One other person to add to your list that Henry did not send to you is the State Association of Oregon President, Louise Dix, and she is online.
She is, and she'll be introduced. I do have that name, actually.
Oh, good. Good job, Henry.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Why don't we go ahead? Louise Dix, President of the Oregon Trail Volksport Association. Louise,
Hi,
you wanna-
everyone. Happy to be here.
Very good. All right, also on our panel from the AVA, Pat Jewett, graduate of America Walks Advocacy Academy. We're gonna have to hear about that one. An AVA member and member of the AVA Publicity Committee for the North and the Northwest region. Pat, say hi.
Hello. Nice to be here.
Thanks so much, Pat. Of course, Henry Rosales, our CEO, and from our headquarters down in San Antonio. Henry, you want to pop in again and say hi? No,
Good evening.
that's-
Thanks.
Okay, that's great. We have several other folks. Our the chair of our America Walks AVA board, yeah, Nancy Wittenberg. Nancy, why don't we have you show up and say hi?
Okay. Hi. Here I am. Finally, I
Thanks.
got the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, and so much. And behind me, now appearing out of the blue, is the board secretary, Cecilia Miner, and I really appreciate her being the better half behind me here in this event. So very good. Well, that is our introduction. We are very fortunate to have 67 members of our community total tonight. This is recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel for everyone in a public forum. And we'll distribute that link in the next checkpoint as well. Henry, I'm going to turn it back to you. Or at least, can you tell me which introductory video you want first? You want America Walks video, or do you want the AVA video?
The AVA video, if you have that one.
I do have that one. Very good. So I'm going to go to share screen mode. We're going to share our sound. Let's learn about us.
Jim.
We're AVA, America's Walking Club. We're an organization that provides fun, fitness, and friendship for people of all ages and all physical abilities. And we're set up across the country with local clubs. They set up walks to show off the best in their community, and we have a lot of fun. It's family friendly, it's travel oriented in the sense that we're always able to find a place around the country that we can walk.
Hi, my name is Christine Handy. I have been a part of American Volksport Association for 3 years now. My friends and I have walked through chemotherapy and multiple surgeries in just life. American Volksport Association is a community I love being a part of.
Whether you're 10 or whether you're 85, we enjoy the sport, walking at our own pace.
Have met people all over the country and all over the world because we're part of an international organization, the IVV, and there are countries that we can walk in all over.
We provide a trail that somebody planned in advance. It's an interesting trail. The people who planned it live in that town or that city. Probably goes by everything you want to see in that area.
Sometimes there's city walks, sometimes it's country walks. It's about having fun, and it's about meeting new people and socializing. Every club deals with fun, fitness, and friendship. Always enjoy, after a good walk, going out to eat, socializing with the people, and just having a good time. So that's what AVA is all about. It's about fitness, because everybody knows that walking is good for you, but it's about fun, because AVA makes walking fun.
And that is the AVA video. Henry, your hand is raised. Do you want to say something before we show the next video?
Yes, I'm sorry. Just wanted to make sure and introduce Mr. Graham Fawcett. He's the Vice President of the IVV, and we're excited to have him join us here this evening. So like to, if you could say hi, so everyone can see who he is.
Please come forward, sir, and take off the camera.
Thank you for your invitation. I'm looking forward to the other presentations. I was most impressed by the first one so far. Is that available to the public on YouTube or somewhere yet already?
It's on our AVA website. It's right there in the front of our website and shareable off the YouTube channel. So,
with your permission, I will share it.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you so very much. Well, that brings us up now to a video presentation from our other organization, guest organization, America Walks.
Tim, if I may just sort of preview this a little bit with a kind of context of America Walks, would that be okay?
Please go right ahead, sir.
Yeah, thanks. So I know I met several of you in Madison earlier this summer, and I did a presentation there. So when Henry and I were discussing this webinar, we decided not to do the presentation again. But just for those of you that may not have been in that room, America Walks is about a 23-year-old national education and advocacy organization focused on increasing walking across the United States and also improving the conditions for walking by building the capacity of local community change agents and advocates to work with the local government entities to slow down traffic, to put in sidewalks and crosswalks and trails, and make walking conditions really good in their communities. It's an unfortunate fact that over the last 70 or 80 years, the American transportation system has really eroded conditions for walking by building a lot of large volume, high-speed freeways everywhere, which are very difficult to walk along. They're very difficult to get across. They create a lot of noise and pollution and carbon emissions and a real lack of safety for the communities. So our goal as an organization is to try to roll back some of those negative changes, make our communities safer, more compact, and more walkable. And one of the programs that we do is called the Walking College. And this is about a 6-month online training program. 140 fellows have completed the program so far. There are 2 on this call. Hayden Black Walker, who will be taking part in the discussion, completed the fellowship program, I think in 2016, and Pat Jewett, who is also a very active member of AVA, completed the program in 2017. In fact, Pat is the main connection between our 2 organizations, so I want to just thank Pat for all that she's done. Anyway, the video that Tim is about to play is a compilation of the videos made by some of the Walking College fellows from a couple of years ago, talking about their projects at the end of that online training course. So Tim, if you want to go ahead and roll the video, I think we're ready.
Hello. Okay. Then you're going right back.
People who get killed by cars outnumber those who are murdered. In Hawaii, by a ratio of 3 to 1. People who die on roads outnumber gun deaths in Hawaii by a ratio of 2 to 1. And those who die on the road are outnumber those who are murdered by guns by a ratio of 8 to 1. But even with these statistics in mind, I didn't care about this issue until it became very personal. In March 2013, my sister, Emilia Hong, died at age 24 trying to cross the street, not far from where I live now, not far from this computer desk that I'm recording from that we used to share. Even as no one in my family ever learned to drive a car, growing up so poor, no one in my household could afford one. When I began my advocacy, I found a natural ally in Hawaii Bicycling League. They have done outstanding advocacy, whether it's passing laws, building new infrastructure, or getting funding for projects. My hope is to emulate this success by starting my own non-profit organization focused on walking, which is my Walking Action Plan.
If they were getting off the bus at this bus stop, and we traveled down to where the doctor's offices and dentist's offices are, which is across the street, they would have somewhat of a problem. The sidewalks only begin and end in certain areas. There is a crosswalk where the stoplights are. As we get closer to it, I see that we would have a problem if they were going to a dentist or doctor's office. The problem is, this is where they're gonna go. With all these cars passing by, they would have to go ahead and be out in the street to go ahead and go down the hill to whatever doctor or dentist they're visiting. And it goes the other way as well. So they're essentially stuck.
We haven't invested in the public infrastructure that would support greater usage and easier access to the parks within our city boundaries. What I want us to build are linkages between parks and neighborhoods, and those would be on and off-road trails and paths that safely connect residents to their natural environment and to each other.
We're talking about walking and biking and creating activity-friendly routes to everyday destinations, work, church, school, the grocery store, and so forth. And we want to create those routes so that people can either walk or bike to get to those locations. Many of them don't own a car, so walking and biking and public transportation are their primary forms. So what we want to do is create that essential infrastructure so that they can do so more easily, more often, and more safer. One of the ways we're looking to do this is through Tide to Town. It's a 30-plus mile biking and walking trail. It's a network that'll basically encircle all of Savannah and eventually branch out to the surrounding cities within our county. We want every neighborhood, specifically communities that for so long have not had the type of essential infrastructure provided to them, to be able to use this trail network. We believe that Tide to Town really has a ton of momentum. So what I feel that our focus should be now, specifically with my walking action plan and with the REACH grant, is to basically prepare our communities for this type of infrastructure. We know, just based off examples across the country, that sometimes when you bring in this type of infrastructure or these linear park trails, that displacement can occur and the negative effects of gentrification. We want to avoid that, and we feel like it's important for us to work with our communities to protect them from that.
I'm focusing on communication with the city, and I'm creating a guidebook that shows and teaches and builds capacity around how to engage in a project, how a project is chosen, how it's funded, and then what is the process in which a project is completed. These are questions that I find that advocates often want to know, but don't often know how to get those answers or don't know the processes. And so it creates confusion and anger sometimes when projects get delayed or things don't happen when they were supposed to, or they lost funding. I'm hoping by being able to answer these questions, advocates will kind of come to the table and can ask the hard questions so that they know and can be engaged when they need to be when it comes to projects that they're concerned on as far as pedestrian safety and active transportation in general.
I'm trying to fix my neighborhood up. You know, they say charity begins at home. So why not start here?
And so supporting a plan that gets more people moving by foot or bicycle in order to improve our community's public and economic health.
So it'll be a long process over a lot of months and years before we finally, I think, get the results that we're looking for. But I'm confident. The communities here are great. They're super involved. The city council and the local government here is deeply involved and invested in doing what's right. So I really do think that this could be a great thing, and that's where I'm at with my walking action plan. So I'd love to hear more feedback and talk to more people about my plan and see where it takes us.
This guidebook that we're creating, or that I'm creating for Health by Design, will ultimately be used in our Walk Champion program, where we work with community members in the 16 high crash zones in Indianapolis. So we're really excited about that, and it's been a pleasure to be a part of the Walking College.
This is only one part of my action plan in terms of my neighborhood. As you can see, they solve part of the problem, but there is a problem. It's an ongoing challenge to try to do what we can to fix this.
Vision Zero, whose goal is to have 0 road deaths, often begins the question asking how many traffic deaths are acceptable to you. And people answer with an arbitrary number. Then Vision Zero asks, how many members of your immediate family are you okay with being killed by a car? And everyone always answers 0. I will begin the nonprofit in December when I complete my master's in urban and regional planning, hoping it is the beginning of a longer-term movement. In the hopes that fewer families are torn apart, in the hope that eventually what happened to my sister, my family, never happens to anyone ever again.
So hopefully we've ended the share and we are back together again. And with that in mind, for our America's Walking Club members and clubs and club members, the ultimate question tonight is, what is your club giving back to your community? How is being a walking club making your community better? Perhaps what we learned tonight might be one way in which your club can participate in that process. With that, I'll turn it over back to Ian, back to you, sir. And how would you like to proceed from now?
Yeah, okay. Well, maybe now would be a good time to go to Izzy and Hayden to talk more specifically about the projects that they're working on in Oregon and in Austin, Texas, respectively. And then I do believe we have some leaders from the AVA clubs in Oregon and Texas as well. So maybe after Izzy and Hayden speak, those AVA leaders could respond, and let's sort of try to guide the conversation towards the possibility of our America Walks advocacy groups across the country partnering or collaborating in some way with the AVA clubs to both have, well-attended, enjoyable walking events, and also to help move the needle on community design so that those delightful walkable spaces are eventually everywhere, and that everywhere is safe. So Izzy, why don't you go next and tell us about the work of Oregon Walks, and I think you are already connected with, I think your organization is already connected with some folks walkers in Oregon, right?
Yeah, that is correct. Again, thanks for having me on tonight. One of the Volkswagen groups that we support out here by promoting some of their events is the East County Windwalkers. We've been active for a long time. We actually have documented like one of their stories online, and we'd love to share that with you afterwards, kind of just helping them get that word out. And I'd like to share a little bit about Oregon Walks and what we have going on. As a lot of our work is advocacy related, but also creating events and walking groups to get people out and about, because walking is different for everyone, whether you walk as a recreation, for fun, for health, or you walk as a necessity, as a mode of transportation. Those are not exclusive. Those are very inclusive and rely on each other. So a lot of our work doesn't happen, in silos. They need to happen in tandem. And one of the projects we have going on in both of those realms is keeping walking groups and events going again. COVID in 2020, 2021's kind of put that on hold. And we've been hearing a lot that people want to get out and connect with nature and friends and family. And that's kind of been happening on a limited scale. So we're looking forward to 2022 is getting people out and connecting in person, safely once everything's able to go, because there's a need for that to socialize, interact, and explore. Another thing we have going on is one of our most dangerous corridors and cuts through Portland. We made a big advocacy push with a bunch of community partners and elected officials, and now we have that dangerous corridor being transferred from the State Department of Transportation into the hands of the city, along with $185 million of funding. So being able to control the roads that are in your city and able to address those safety needs are very important. It's a major corridor that unfortunately has divided the city, but now we're looking forward to how that corridor is going to be able to connect our city through walkability, connecting them through resources to your day-to-day daily essentials, doctor, grocery store, library, places of worship, and natural spaces. So, and looking forward to creating walking opportunities and events along that corridor too. So again, walking advocacy and walking events and groups are very inclusive, and they need to happen in tandem. So getting people to identify pedestrians, understanding why walking is important in their day-to-day life and also, their recreation. So that's kind of what we have going on.
Yeah, maybe it makes sense to stay in Oregon and then come to Texas later, because I see, Pat, you've got your camera on. And why don't you talk about, your history as a folks walker, but also how you kind of came across the walking college and the advocacy of a very successful project that you implemented also in North Portland.
Okay, well, I've been folks walking since about 2013. And I started a website, and through my website, searching for everything that's related to walking, I came across America Walks and discovered the walking college. So I was able to apply. I got accepted on the second time I applied, the second year I applied, and completed the course. I worked a little bit with the House Speaker, Tina Kotek, to get a traffic signal on Columbia Boulevard, because that's a freight route in Portland, in North Portland, and it's in my neighborhood. And the success I had with that project was getting some sidewalk extensions. So that was a big plus. And I'm on the North Portland in Motion CAG committee right now. It just, it's a new program in North Portland. So we're looking at walkability, bike lanes and traffic calming and all that for North Portland. And I'm also on the North Portland Greenway board, and that's in North Portland. And we're working on a trail from Kelly Point Park going all the way to the East Esplanade, which would be great to get people off the roads that are walking and biking for job transportation and just recreation too. And I've re-engaged with Tina Kotek, our House Speaker, to get a big push on the North Portland Greenway. So that was kind of exciting to connect with her again. So, and I know Izzy, I've volunteered with Oregon Walks before, and then I kind of took a break, but I think I'm going to re-engage. So looking forward to that.
Great. Okay. And is Ed Hainline here? I think you're with the Folks Walk group in Oregon as well, Ed.
Yeah, I'm going to take and send my comments over to the president of the state association. She's had more involvement with America Walks than what I have, and possibly she can share some of her experiences, because I haven't really had that much experience working with America Walks or with Oregon Walks like what Pat has. I kind of rely on Pat to kind of keep me informed of what all she's doing. But I think possibly Louise Dixon probably give you a little bit more with being the president of the state association and what her involvement would be. But thank you, Jan.
Yeah, great. Izzy, I'm going to just come back to you because you at Oregon Walks, you did a very interesting campaign recently around vehicle speed. I know that Ashton Simpson came on one of our webinars with I think a legal associate of his or of yours to discuss a campaign around speeding vehicles. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, so earlier this year, we released a fatal pedestrian crash report, and that went into depth with all the fatal pedestrian crashes from 2017 to 2019, going and retrieving police records and basically analyzing all of those crashes, land use, infrastructure, lighting, time of day, reporting both in the news and police reporting, and analyzing all those and seeing almost like the anatomy of a crash, what are causing these crashes. And the biggest factor wasn't, these distracted pedestrians or, the stuff you hear, like, victim blaming on it's speed, it's infrastructure, it's lighting, and speed is the biggest factor. Over the, 30 miles an hour, you're more likely to be killed in a crash no matter where you're at. So, and our streets are designed in a way that encourages that high speed, just like wide lanes that are, 4 lanes in one direction with very little traffic signals or anything to slow down cars. Speed was one of the biggest factors. And one of the ways we can change that is obviously you can lower speed limits. That doesn't really do a lot to encourage folks to slow down, but in order to lower speed limits is infrastructure. Redesign the way our roads are designed and laid out. They designed to move cars from point A to point B. They designed to, to move people, whether that's on bikes or walking or transit or driving. Infrastructure and speed are a big factor, and pushing a lot to lower speed limits, especially in our community streets. The city's done a big push on that. I forget the number, but the majority of our residential streets are now 20-mile speed limits, which is exciting.
Good.
So,
yeah, so you did the study and you're using the data now to advocate at the city council level. Was this in Portland?
Yeah, it was limited only to the city of Portland. Retrieving police records was a challenge, and so and also we're just pretty small in scale. We're just a staff of 2, so we relied a lot on volunteers and experts in their time to get those police records and analyze them. So, but hopefully it's something that other cities and other organizations can do. It's diving deep and analyzing all the causes and potential causes that cause these crashes, and holding it, reporting and accounting to a higher standards.
So all of this sounds somewhat technical and requiring a lot of knowledge and time, but I know your organization has opportunities for people kind of coming into this work as a volunteer at the ground level. Tell us a little bit about how other residents of Portland and the state of Oregon can become part of the movement if they just love walking and they're looking for a way to help improve walkability.
Yeah, I mean, we have some resources on our website, and I would say getting people out to walk is very important for whatever that reason is. Again, whether it's social, it's exploring natural areas. I think that is a gateway to getting people to identifying as pedestrians and as folks who need to walk around. So I think just getting people to see their built environment in a different way that they might not normally see is very important. So thinking walking groups are very essential to that. And also, just sharing opportunities online or with your neighbors, I think is also really good. So just building that dialogue and communication is one way to get involved. And feel free to come to one of our events. We're looking to host a lot more in 2022. And again, break down those barriers to understanding transportation jargon and technicalities, because I think it's very overwhelming sometimes with spaghetti soup about transportation. So just making it more accessible to people. So.
Yeah, and sometimes things like letter writing campaigns can be really, really effective if there's a particular issue coming up before the city council, and there are, hundreds, thousands of people out there in the community who are connected to the campaign. simply signing on to a letter so that those council members who maybe are going to consider reducing the speed limits or authorizing a new road design that's going to make a place more pedestrian friendly, just being a letter writer can really help.
You know, also just starting local too, you know, what is it in your neighborhood that you notice? Like, is the lack of sidewalks like Pat was addressing, or is it street lighting, or, you know, starting local, the things that impact you, or are you able to even walk around in your neighborhood, you know? So start where you live.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Izzy. Pat, anything you want to add to what's been said?
Not really. It sounds like he's said it all. There's a lot to work for in Oregon, I think, to especially Portland, to make things more walkable.
Yeah, and Portland, actually, from a national perspective, the downtown part of Portland is considered one of the most walkable cities in America. It's right up there. But as you get further out to where Pat lives and other areas, it's much like a lot of other cities. Hey, let's go to Texas. And Hayden, why don't you talk a little bit about some of the projects that you're working on in Austin and what you know of what's happening statewide?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. I wanted to say, when I was watching the Walking Club video, it made me think of Jan Gehl, who is an author from Copenhagen, who writes about cities. And he talks about, it always struck me as such an aha moment. He always talks about how, you know, many people pay thousands of dollars to go travel to some place where it is actually walkable, and yet we kind of struggle to do that in our own built environment. So seeing the video from all the different places in urban and rural, but also around the world, really reminded me of how important that is. So in Austin, well, I guess it might help to kind of just walk through quickly. In about 2014, maybe, the city created a pedestrian advisory council. And I always mention that because I think it's really important that became a place for kind of all the walking advocates to show up and gather. Up until then, there had been a bicycle advisory council, and they kept saying, oh, we don't need a pedestrian one because we can just handle it from the biking side. But they're different issues. And I think it was really important in how Austin kind of really started to ramp up the way we talk about walkability and our streets. And then from there, Vision Zero ATX was created and Walk Austin was created. And I've been involved in both. And really with the recognition that you need kind of the nonprofit side, that the city can do certain things, but there's certain things they can't do. And so it was we wanted to balance that and try to cover all our bases. So Walk Austin is still fairly small, but we in 2020 got an ARP challenge grant, which was really exciting, to promote and help manage what we call an Austin Healthy Street. So most of you probably remember during COVID, a lot of cities had what they mostly called slow streets. For some reason, our city council decided to call them healthy streets, but where streets were reprioritized, and we put up barricades, and cars were allowed to drive on the streets, but they had to drive very slowly and be aware of people on those streets. And you really saw people come out of their houses. They were needing places to exercise and socialize safely, distant from each other. And so you really saw this amazing outpouring of people out into the street. And I think, to me, that's one of the really important things of having a group that's a walking club. And we just have never had the bandwidth to do that. And I love the idea of potentially partnering, because I think if people can actually get out in the street and or on an urban trail and experience that safe environment, and understand all the things that Izzy was talking about, like the impact of vehicular speed and how the roads are designed, a friend of mine always talks about how we're kind of like rats along the edges, trying to dodge the traffic, and what a different experience it is to be in a safe environment where you're free to move about. So I'll just end with one final thought, which is kind of interesting to me, and we're seeing across the country. We have Walk Austin, and we have Vision Zero, and then we have Bike Austin. And those organizations have now decided to merge. That's not official knowledge, and we're still in the process of doing that. But I mentioned that because I think everyone started recognizing that, that it was really important not to compete for resources, for staff and funding and bandwidth, and that hopefully merging together, we can make streets that are more holistic for everybody. We try to remind people that if it's safe for people to walk and bike and be in a wheelchair, then it's safe for drivers too, that it really improves the experience for everybody. So that's where we are in Austin. In Texas, we don't really have a statewide organization, and this conversation is making me feel like we need one. So maybe that's my next project. I don't know. But I think it's really important. I was visiting with someone who's operated in transportation space at the state level for a very long time. Was an appointee of the governor, and he was saying, the legislatures are just pulled in so many different directions. If there's not somebody advocating for safer, walkable, streets and built environments, you're just not going to get them. You're going to get the same transportation structures that we've gotten all along if there's not a really strong advocacy for something different. So I'll leave it there. And
Thanks, Hayden. I want to bring in Susan Medlin. And Susan, I think you're the organizer of the Texas Folk Sports Group. I'm not sure which community you're in Texas, but tell us about what you're doing and whether you feel like your group would be interested in getting more involved in some of the advocacy efforts.
Okay, I'm the vice president of AVA, America's Walking Club, and with the help of the International Marching League event in Arlington, Virginia, we started an international walking event here in San Antonio every February. So that's been a real big eye-opener for the city to have a lot of international walkers coming to our city and walking. We also, I think I'm very proud of what we did during the pandemic, because when everything shut down, we of course shut down our walks. Our last walk was mid-March of that year. But within about 6 to 8 weeks, we realized we could not stop walking together. And so we started walking again. Everyone sanitized their hands, everyone wore masks. We stood 6 feet apart in the sign-in, the sign-in area, but we kept on walking because it's so important for us to see our friends, to be outdoors with our friends, even if we have to stay 6 feet apart with masks. And I'm proud to say that we kept our walking schedule going. No one ever got sick. And I don't think any of us had the problems with depression that you're hearing so much about, because we got out there with our friends and we just kept walking. So I think that's something we've done really well. And I'd like to praise San Antonio for doing an excellent job of building hike and bike trails that circle the city. And they've been doing this for about 20 years, and their funding source just got cut to provide additional funding for job retraining after the pandemic. So we're watching that carefully to see if we need to do more advocacy for money to go back to that program. But other than that, we're preparing for our big international event in February. And then for the first time in North America, we're hosting an Olympiad walking event. under the IVV, our parent organization. And so that will be in February 2023, and we expect several thousand walkers in San Antonio. So we'd love to find out if there's any problem areas in our city on these routes and work with the folks in Austin to see how we can approach our city about, you know, say adding pedestrian lights, pedestrian crosswalks, flashing stop signs at dangerous intersections, things like that. So I'm eager to work with you.
Well, I'm going to hand back to Tim in just a minute to facilitate a Q&A. But since, Susan, you mentioned going out and evaluating your neighborhood, I'm going to call on Hayden to talk about a tool that we use in the advocacy community to do that assessment. Tell everybody about a walk audit, Hayden.
Well, the walk audits are just so important to get people out into that built environment and to assess what needs to be changed and document that. I think the documentation is really important, but you know, also just getting people out to experience. You know, I can't tell you how many times we've taken staff from the Texas Department of Transportation or gotten a council member out and really gotten them to experience what it's like and understand. Yeah, I think that the walk audit tool is incredibly important. And then I'll just mention too, Susan, since you brought it up, in Austin, your city budget may be the same. Our city budget is woefully underfunded for things like sidewalks and safe crossings and pedestrian hybrid beacons. And so what we've done in Austin from the advocacy side is we've pushed really, really hard for a number of bond measures. And last November, we got a bond for $460 million passed to improve walking and bicycling and ADA compliance and safe routes to schools, kind of a whole Safe Streets package. And that's been really effective because with all that money, then city staff has really ramped up and they've really built a system where they can deliver really quickly. It's made a huge difference. And then I think when there are facilities on the ground that people can see and use and they understand how much better it is, then they start demanding more. You know, they have something to look to ask for. And so we've had a lot of success here with that.
Yeah, great. And I'm going to place a link in the chat to a walk audit tool that has been produced by AARP, Livable Communities, that a lot of us in the advocacy movement use on a regular basis, going out with groups and documenting what we see in a sort of a systematic way. But I know we want to have some Q&A and discussion. So Tim, let me hand it back to you to facilitate that.
Thank you. And going to our chat for questions. And if you do have questions, please type them there. If we don't get to every question tonight, this is being recorded and these questions are being recorded, and we'll make sure that we get an answer for you from our America Walk community representatives with us tonight. From Ronald Jones, a local AVA club officer, he asks, first, how can our club join America Walk's website? What are the requirements? I only see a few AVA clubs listed there.
Yeah, well, it's pretty easy to become part of the America Walks community. We have about 44,000 people across the country who receive our newsletters, who participate in social media communications, who attend our webinars, which are free. So all you need to do is to go to americawalks.org and scroll down to the bottom of the page and just sign up as an individual. Now, we do have the page, which I think that questioner was referring to, of local walking organizations. And as he said, there are a few AVA clubs there. I think if you want to get featured on that page, just email me with your website address and information about what you do, and we can just go ahead and add you. We represent their organizations that participate in walking, as well as organizations that advocate for safe streets.
Very good. From the same source, the question: what outreach tools and resources and best practices do you have to work with schools and youth groups such as Scouts and 4-H?
Well, let me open it up. Who would like to answer that one? I'm looking at Pat or Hayden or Izzy.
Oh, we do the safe routes to school with the walking school bus, or yeah, that's a pretty big program in I don't know, Olive, Oregon, or Portland specifically, but yeah.
Yeah, I know there's been a big push to, again, like Pat was saying, to get walking school buses and safe routes to school going, so making sure kids can walk to and from school safely. That's not always the case, as you know, because of infrastructure. But also, I would just like encourage connecting with your local school and seeing what opportunities there are. Is there walking groups that occur after school? Is there opportunities to connect with science classes to get kids out and about in nature and walk through natural spaces too? So definitely connecting with your local school and seeing if there's an opportunity to connect there.
Very good. As America Walks, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I've just put the link to America Walks resources page, which has lots of toolkits and articles and TED Talks and things, including if you navigate through the different topics there, articles and best practices in safe routes to school.
All right, very good. Has America Walks identified any community partners in any of the states that can be shared with our local clubs to contact and approach actually for funding resources? Where do you get your funding, and is that shareable, or how do you share those resources with some of your member organizations like local AVA clubs?
Yeah, well, I'll answer the last part first and then go to the first part. America Walks has one primary funding source, which is the United States Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And starting in about 2014 or 13, we're now on our second 5-year grant. And they fund us to do really all of the different things we do. The Walking College is largely funded by CDC, our webinar series, our maintaining our resources on our website. The National Walking Summit, which is a kind of a convention that we hold every couple of years, is largely funded by the CDC. And they do that because they are looking to create a healthier America, and they know that when we have walkable places, people walk, and just the act of walking regularly. If everybody walked, half an hour a day, everybody in America walked half an hour a day, the incidence of chronic disease would go dramatically down over time as that exercise had its impact. But the reason people don't walk is because many, many people live in very unsafe, very unwalkable places. So we also do technical assistance. We facilitate workshops and trainings for government, local government, and other groups, and receive revenue for that, kind of a fee-for-service basis. We have a number of other granting sources, and we also solicit private donations from our members, and we do a kind of a fundraising every year. So those are our main sources. Now, as far as partnering with local AVA organizations and funding those, we don't really have the level of funds that we can provide large grants to anybody, but we do provide what we call mini grants. And every year we have a program called Community Change Grants. And these are typically $1,500 grants that we give out every year in the fall. Unfortunately, this year's cycle has just ended. But what we're looking to support with those funds are small projects such as, pop-up crosswalks or even walking events can be funded by that. I think if there is a plan to then leverage the participation in that walking event to advocate for safety improvements or walkability improvements. So that will come around again about September of next year, America Walks Community Change Grants. And again, if you look under programs on our website, there's information about it and about over the previous years, the groups that have received those grants. But AARP has come up a couple of times tonight, and they have a bigger version of that community change grant, which they call community challenge grants. And I believe those are more like $10,000 to $20,000 for doing the similar kind of thing, improving safety and walkability and livability. So I would encourage you to just Google AARP Community Challenge Grants if you are interested in applying for funding. In order to, it will probably be more than simply organizing your walks. They will want to fund efforts to actually change things in your community for the better.
Very good. Can you tell us about when the next, what sounded like a convention or a giant gathering of your organization, when will that next one occur? And gosh, can we get an invitation?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. We don't have one planned right now. The last one we held was in St. Louis in March 2020. And Susan mentioned that time frame when suddenly the coronavirus pandemic became a thing. And we held that literally a few days before, most of the country locked down. We are hoping to hold another one. It probably won't be till 2023. As I'm sure you know, because you do an annual convention, these things take a year to plan, getting hundreds of people. But yes, those are always open to anybody. They're not restricted to members. And I'll make sure I connect with Henry when we start planning that next one and get invitations out.
Well, in 2023 is a real banner year for us in the AVA. In Texas in February, we have this very large international convention of walking is taking place. And in October, in the nation's capital, the leadership of 30 different international walking communities from around the world, 30 different countries is coming. So if you could bookmark those two, February and October, and put it in the middle, and perhaps even attach it to us in some fashion to let our international events, because it really will be the first time in North America will become a walking destination in 2023. So if you want to leverage that and promote your event as part of that, perhaps that can be part of the discussion, because we are working on relationships with our Canadian partners as well. And perhaps that might be a way for to promote, we can contribute to what you're doing as well. Just a thought.
And that event is it in San Antonio in February 2023?
That is correct. And then in October in Arlington, Virginia, which is right on the border of Washington, D.C. So we will have thousands in February and an awful lot. So we have 40 countries represented in February and 30 countries represented in October, all walking organizations from around the world coming to those two destinations. So you might even want to tack your event onto one of those two things.
You never know.
Before or after.
That's a great idea. Well, I've made a note of those dates, and I'll continue connecting with Henry. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, since we're right down the road, I would love to promote that to all the walking advocates here in Austin. When materials are available, that would be great.
Very good. Well, as we're looking at your website, you can look at ours and you'll start to see how 2023 is going to be truly for the North American continent, a continental walking experience. So your convention plugged into the middle there or attached to one of those two events would really probably magnify the publicity, because you're going to bring all these people from around the world to walk. And So that might be another aspect for us to partner with you. So just a thought. Meanwhile, back to our chat room, and we are approaching the end of our hour. Henry, do I get to keep going, or do you want me to wrap this up? What do you want?
I'm okay if you want to extend it a few more minutes, if people are willing to stick around.
Okay, all right. So I guess we do have a few more comments I want to get involved with. We do have, I invite everybody to get into the chat. There are the links to the AARP. I guess I'll kind of. All right. An awful lot of good links, and that's really the most important thing going on here. So as you advocate through America Walks, how can we as the users of the walking trails or streets and sidewalks, how can we support you in what you do?
Let me toss that over to Izzy and Hayden first. Izzy, why don't you go next?
Ooh, yeah. No, give me a second. I'm gonna pass it over to Hayden. Come back to me.
Hayden.
Very smooth, is he? I guess the thing that off the top of my head is just to start to create more of a partnership. I think that, you know, local AVA chapters, either in San Antonio or in Austin or in Central Texas, partnering with Walk Austin and our other advocacy groups. You know, we're very focused on the advocacy side and wish we had the bandwidth to do more walks. I think it could be a really powerful partnership. I would love to explore that.
Yeah, maybe you know, starting with a walking event that is that you know, for instance, Walk Austin and AVA members in the Austin area kind of plan together, and then perhaps a discussion of campaigns. I know one of your campaigns, Hayden, that you're working on involves Texas DOT's plans for I-35 and your plans, which are a little different, and
right.
You know, educating folks walkers about, you know, those options and how they can engage and write letters to, you know, decision makers and participate in the campaign.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Anything similar like that in Portland or the state of Oregon, is it?
Yeah, I would definitely echo what Hayden was saying. It's just like finding opportunities to collaborate and share each other's work. You know, there's opportunity to, you know, share resources and upcoming opportunities and events. And there's, you know, I feel like that's a missing gap right there, is finding opportunities to collaborate and work together. We would love to reach a new audience and new people, and I'm sure AVA would like to as well too. So
there's some trail opportunities in Portland right now because Metro has about funding for 40 million to go to trails, and they have to partition who gets all that funding, which organizations get it. And Portland Parks has some funding too, and they have to figure out which trails are more worthy. And there's a lot of trails like the regional trail, the 40-mile loop regional trail right now, and we have gaps. I think we have like 9 gaps, and we're keep trying to fund those gaps and get them built. And the North Portland Greenway, that's what we're trying to fund right now, are the gaps. So, you know, when you hear something from Metro, you know, think about looking at their information and seeing what it's about. And if it's about trail funding or something and you have an opinion about it, look at the sites and make your voice heard. It's more important than you think. I kind of come to realize that.
And probably the first step for anybody in Oregon, anybody in the Austin area, would be to go to the websites of those organizations. Izzy and Hayden, I imagine you have communications that go out on a regular basis, and people can just go and sign up to receive those, so they kind of know what's going on and when there are opportunities to, you know, to help the cause.
It seems like I'm seeing a lot of local advocacy, that America Walks is a walk local sort of program. What about the long distances, inter-community, inter-city connections and things like that? What is America Walks doing for the long haul?
Well, we do work nationally, but more in partnership with other organizations that have different type of funding. The Rails to Trails Conservancy, the Smart Growth America, which has Transportation for America as one of its big programs, and the National Complete Streets Coalition, the League of American Bicyclists. They have a lot more funding that they can use for lobbying at the federal level for things like, you know, intercity trails and rail to trail conversions, and federal transportation policy that creates more walkways and bikeways and so on. So we're a sort of a partner with those other national organizations, and we've carved out our niche as supporting local advocates, building the skills and knowledge of local advocates to do the work at the local level, and being the kind of national convener of that. But those other organizations, Smart Growth America, Rails to Trails Conservancy, those are all, you know, open public organizations that people can join and participate in and support. And they are working really hard on federal policy and federal funding to improve walking across, you know, the whole country.
Very good, thank you. A question from Graham. You asked me what is the name of the convention. I'll throw that back to Ian. What is the name of your convention called, please?
It's the National Walking Summit.
National Walking Summit, okay. And the two I was talking about was the Texas Trail Roundup and the IVV Olympiad in February, and the U.S. Freedom Walk Festival in October in Washington, D.C. And both of those are IML events. And in October, the IML leadership is actually meeting in Washington, D.C. that year. So that's where we have in 2023 the leaders of the two major international walking organizations coming to this continent. And so it's a great opportunity for us for walking advocacy to really show the world is coming to the USA to walk in 2023, and come walk with us, and let us show you why we need trails and why we need streets and things like that. So all of that's good. In what way is perhaps the infrastructure bill that was just passed, is that going to help support what you're doing? Is there funds in there for trails?
I've got an opinion on that, but I want to, Hayden or Izzy, either of you want to make some comments on the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that was just signed by the president?
I'm still struggling a little bit, just sort of reading the big buckets. I do think the federal government can play a really big role in reprioritizing. And, you know, for so long, you know, Ian talked about this, for so long we've funded infrastructure for cars. And I think there's something like 26 billion in the plan to build and widen highways, whereas there's like 1 billion to reconnect communities. So I'm not sure exactly how it translates to Texas, and I think the funding is probably going to be better, but you know, it's probably easy for me to say sitting down here in Austin, I wish we had even more.
Yeah, there's been an interesting sort of debate within our larger movement. And I think on one side, there are organizations like the Rails to Trails Conservancy, which have been lobbying hard for more funding for specific pedestrian, bicycle, and trail programs. And they have been very successful this time. Those numbers have all increased, as Hayden says. The other side, the other end of the spectrum, is Transportation for America, which takes a bigger picture view. They see the way that transportation has been done in America for decades as fundamentally flawed. And they want to see a whole new, start again. How do we approach transportation? What are our goals? Is safety an important goal? Is access for walking and biking an important goal? Climate, reducing carbon emissions, is that an important goal? Equity, so that everybody, no matter whether you're living in a very poor neighborhood or a country club neighborhood, has access to safe and enjoyable and effective transportation. So whereas Rails to Trails are happy about the increase in some specific programs like the Recreational Trails program and the Transportation Alternatives program, Transportation for America feels that the bill is just more of the same, and there's far too much for highway expansion and highway widening at a time when we need to be reducing automobile travel if we're going to get to, net zero in carbon emissions by 2050 or something. It really doesn't make sense to keep widening and expanding highways and destroying communities. So I'm more towards that end, and there was a very good bill that it was only passed by the House, and it never made any traction in the US Senate. It was called the Invest Act. And it took that approach of really starting with a vision and goals for transportation and mobility that looked at equity and safety and climate, and building a transportation funding program from that vision. And unfortunately, that never got any traction in the Senate. And while some elements eventually ended up in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the overall philosophy didn't.
Okay, one last question then, and we'll call it a night. And that question is, we have a number of individual clubs that are asking, how do we start? How does our club get involved at the local level to support what it is you're doing? So what resource on your website, what would you tell them? They want to get involved in their local community. How do they start?
I'm going to suggest, and Henry just put his camera back on, that everybody who wants to get involved in this way emails Henry. Henry will send the links to your organizations and your locations to me, and I will go to our directory of advocacy organizations all over the country, just like Oregon Walks, just like Walk Austin, and reach out to somebody there. And let's try to make a few individual connections in the communities. I'm quite certain that most of the communities that the AVA clubs are in have walking advocacy organizations in them as well.
You nailed it, Ian. You nailed it. So yes, I was just going to say, what's next? So if you're interested, or your club is interested, send me an email with whomever is going to be the point of contact, is it a club officer, a member, whatnot, the name of the club, the city, and the state. Then I'll collect that and send it to Ian to sort of see where there's a match, see where they have groups, if there's a group in that same area, and then we will make the connection. We'll make the introductions, we'll make the connection probably by email. And then the third step, it's up to you, to the clubs. It's exploratory. Just start talking about what could happen. I love the idea about maybe hosting a walk, and then there's an advocacy connection at the end, or part of it. Or I mean, that's great. That's mutual interest coming together to meet what our goals and what we want to do as two different organizations, but with the same interest. So that would be where to go from here. So again, send me the information, and then we'll make the connection. And then the third step is up to you all to see how you just have a discussion, how you might be able to engage with each other. And then we'd like to hear back if anything did come of this.
Very good. Well, then we'll call that the end for tonight. And again, thank you to all of our speakers from both America Walks and America's Walking Club. So again, thank you so very much to each and every one of you. I'm going to go ahead and stop